So this past weekend, we visited St. Louis, Missouri for the KAAN conference. It's the Korean American
Adoptive Family Network
conference. It's their 17th annual conference. And last year it was in the Twin Cities. It was Aeriel's first time attending, and I didn't join her, and so this year we decided to go together, and it was my first time. So lots to think about, lots to reflect on, and
I think it was really interesting this time attending and thinking about what it means for our relationship that I've adopted.
I think for me that was one of the biggest takeaways or points of reflection, was to think about our relationship in terms of your adoption and from an adoption lens, and to meet other couples who identify in similar ways that we do. And so it was interesting to hear some of the commonalities and things that we share in common. Like, for example, a lot of the guys at the conference who were there with their adopted spouses all talked about how their adopted spouses told them which sessions of the conference they wanted them to go to, and even went as far as like circling their schedule. And I think I could relate to some of that.
Whatever do you mean, my dear? I think it's interesting to think about like the implications of dating interracially. I mean, something that you and I have talked about, what does it mean that I'm Asian and I'm in this heterosexual relationship, I'm the cisgendered woman, and you're the cisgendered man and you're white, rather than us having opposite
reverse
races,
identities,
right? And how that may or may not play into societal expectations or stereotypes. I was raised in like a white American family. Is it really so surprising that I might end up with someone who is also of that culture and community? And so I guess that makes me wonder, like, what's the data on transracial Korean adoptees? Like, how many of them end up partnering in their same race or culture versus in the race or culture of their family that's adopted them and raised them, and that's what's maybe most familiar.
Well, and we've also talked about sort of this idea of yellow fever and white men who are attracted to only Asian women and because of their Asian features. And I've tried to unpack some of that for myself, in thinking about am I influenced by some of that socializing around Asian women and the sexualization of Asian women. And I think I would be naive to say that I haven't been influenced by that. I mean, you look at images in the media and Lucy Liu, and I think some of that is really prevalent. And so for me to say that I've been immune to that, I think would be naive. One thing that I hadn't thought about, or that I thought more about, was being a parent of a child who has a different perceived race than I do. Specifically an Asian child, and specifically an Asian girl.
I think that conversation came up when we were in the session called What Happened to Dad? And it was a space for adoptees and adoptive fathers to talk about and think about father-adoptee relations, both adoptive fathers and bio fathers, and what's the role of the bio father? Is he even part of the adoption story narrative? And I think, that revelation when one of the adoptive fathers shared, some of the looks that he's gotten when he walks around with his, blossoming young 15-year-old Korean adoptee daughter, that he is a white man, is very attuned to some of the looks and some of the presumptive kind of attitudes he feels like others take. That was really gross. And
heavy.
It was
really heavy.
Yeah, and it was strange because I guess that had never even crossed my mind.
So thanks to all the folks at KAAN for having us, and we look forward to staying in touch and hopefully being there next year. What are some of the things we talked about?
Oh my God, there was a cat.
And it's a beautiful cat.
It's beautiful.